Now to France, where there's mounting public anger after the murder of an 11-year-old girl sparked accusations of failures by police and the justice system. The main suspect had been the subject of previous complaints concerning alleged sexual abuse of children, and critics say authorities failed to act quickly enough. Now the case has triggered nationwide protests and a fierce political debate over whether France's courts actually have the resources to protect vulnerable children. Well, the family of the murdered girl, known only as Liana, led a silent march through their hometown on Sunday. Speaking for the family, their lawyer issued a statement calling for more funding for France's struggling justice system and appealing against knee-jerk changes to the law. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron said he feared the case would damage trust in the country's institutions, and he called for calm. Here's the president's spokesperson.
The emotion felt across the nation is shared, as our affection and solidarity with the family and with all the families experiencing similar situations. Respect, support and decency should prevail. This raises a fundamental question, that of the protection of children and the effectiveness of public action. Ultimately, it is our confidence in our institutions that is also at stake.
Straight to journalist Catherine Field in Paris. Welcome, Catherine. Can we start with the man in custody? What more can you tell us about him?
Well, he is in custody. He has not yet been charged. He is merely a suspect at this moment. He is a 41-year-old. He had been brought in for questioning after the body of the 11-year-old Liana had been found. We do know that he had been working in that area, sometimes as a cleaner at a school, and had been facing allegations, although had not yet been questioned, about earlier allegations of rape and sexual abuse of young children.
And this is why people are so angry. This man had previously been reported to police who apparently failed to act.
Exactly. And one of those cases occurred in August 2025, where the mother of a 10-year-old girl went to the police, alleged that her daughter had been raped by this man several times, that this man had threatened her with violence if she had told her parents or she'd gone to the police. She went back to the police week in, week out, begging them to at least bring this man in for questioning. Nothing happened there. There are other allegations that because he'd worked in schools and had these allegations of sexual conduct towards children sort of in the mix, if you like, that they were out there, that he was still allowed to work with children. So it's that people are really upset about, that it seemed that the safeguarding of children was not the priority.
The family's lawyer has been speaking, and the lawyer seems to be blaming a systemic problem with resources in the justice system rather than blaming individual mistakes. Is that an opinion shared amongst France's legal community?
It's difficult to say. Certainly what we do know is that 70,000 legal complaints or allegations of rape, sexual interference are in the process of being investigated by the Justice Department. So yes, there is very clearly a problem with the processing. In the case of Liane, what seems to have been the problem was that an allegation was made in a different town, in a different district. It hadn't been handed over to police in the new district. There was no coordination set up between them. Certainly, the head of the prosecution service in France has said there is a problem, and that the prosecution service has to go back to ground zero, has to say what has gone wrong, that it's not just caused the death of this young girl, but also how has it come about that 70,000 dossiers are there waiting to be investigated, not just by police, but also by magistrates.
OK, so this senior prosecutor has spoken, but France's justice minister has also spoken. People have been calling for his resignation, and he's saying that the problem isn't resources, but the need to prioritise allegations of rape.
The problem for the current Justice Minister is every time something comes up in the media that is a question about the efficiency or the funding of the Justice Department in France, he says, well, he will make this priority number one. So this is sort of, if you like, what the magistrates are saying is, well, he comes up with these new priorities all the time. And every month we have a new priority. So that has not been taken very seriously. The real problem, of course, for the Minister of Justice is that he has always said law and order is his number one priority. And on this, it looks as though, as the head of the government department in charge of security and the judiciary, that he has let this fall by the wayside, that there hasn't been efficiency. And let's not forget, this comes at a time when France is still reeling from those allegations several years ago of Gisèle Pellicot in the south of France, who was raped by as many as 50 men in her own home. France is still questioning, are there the right safeguards in place protecting women, children, and are police really aware of what needs to be done to get the judicial system moving to address these allegations?
So how politically damaging has this case become for the government?
It's a very difficult one for this government because on the one hand, every time they say, well, it's to do with funding, then lawyers and the judiciary come back and say, well, we've had a 50% increase in funding since this President Emmanuel Macron came to office. So it could be very damaging. And let's not forget, this is France. There's a presidential election coming up just in a year's time. So everyone is going to be looking to make sure that none of this sticks to them. And they're all very busy in moving the guilt for this around. And I think that's what we heard most at some of the rallies that were held across the country on Monday evening, was that mothers, women, children, parents, everyone who came out on the streets was saying, nobody seems to take responsibility for the failures to protect women and children.
And so are any of these parties or groups looking ahead to the presidential elections next year, are any of them trying to exploit this case?
Oh, absolutely. They're saying, particularly the Justice Minister, Gérald Darmanin, said that he's been asleep at the wheel. He, of course, has got great presidential ambitions. This may well turn out to damage those ambitions for a time. Also, the earlier Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, he was again an Interior Minister on law and order, justice being done. He could also see his attempts to stand as one of the lead candidates in next year's election to be damaged. On the far right, of course, you've got Marine Le Pen. She is saying, look, this just goes to show that they haven't been working as they said that they have been working.
Right, so we've also heard from the French president warning that trust in French institutions is at stake. So is there a risk of this case becoming a much broader symbol of public frustration with the state?
There is that risk because it's so difficult to actually pinpoint who could be the one that has caused the situation to come about. Is it the judiciary? Is it the Justice Minister? Is it the Interior Ministry? Is it the Education Department, who we saw allowed this alleged perpetrator to continue working at schools around the country? So at the moment, it's so very fluid that really, if it gets much more sort of traction, we could see people saying, well, what's the point? You've got this government, they're not protecting our future.
Thank you so much for that, Catherine. Journalist Catherine Field in Paris.